Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. The meeting has started. Welcome to this January 15th meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners of the Halifax Regional Municipality. Call the meeting to order, and traditionally, as we start with the Mi'kmaq land acknowledgement, the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Prior to asking about community announcements, I want to acknowledge our colleague, Commissioner Akindoju, and the loss of his brother on December 20th in Nigeria. William Olumbunmi Akindoju was a father, a brother, a son, and an all-round quality person. And we join with Commissioner Akindoju in expressing condolences on his brother's death. Community announcements. Hearing none. Approval of minutes, January 6th and January 8th. Call for the approval of the January 6th and January 8th, 2025 minutes. Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Seconder? Vice Chair O'Malley. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes that people want to note? All in favor? Motion's passed. Thank you. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Chair Giles, there are no additions or deletions to the agenda.
Thank you. Business arising out of the minutes? There is none.
Chair, we need a motion to approve the order of business, please.
Yes. Thank you. Commissioner Kent? Commissioner Hinch? All in favor of the order of business? Thank you. Contrary? Carried. Business arising out of the minutes? None. Declaration of conflicts of interest. I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. Seeing none, move on to agenda item 7, consideration of deferred business. There is none. Agenda item 8, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, has any correspondence been received?
Yes, Chair Giles. Correspondence was received and circulated for items 10.2.1, 10.2.2, and 10.3.1.
Item 8.2, petitions. Madam Clerk, are there any petitions?
Chair, the clerk's office did not receive any petitions for this meeting.
Did any of the commissioners receive any petitions? Thank you. Are there any presentations? No, thank you. Information on items brought forward. Item 10, reports and discussion. We're now at the point of the meeting where we are discussing the two budgets. I'm going to ask that we divide the meeting into essentially 3. Yes, Commissioner. Oh, sorry.
And 10.1, Chair, is the monthly updates.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. Chief McLean.
Good afternoon, everyone. I believe this is our first update, I think, of the new year. Since obviously I think it's too late in the year now to say Happy New Year, but this is our first time back since the new year. I guess I'll start off with saying, certainly with Halifax Regional Police and Halifax in general, we experienced some tragedy over the holidays. Certainly on New Year's Eve, at around 10:35, we responded to an area on Goshen Street of 2 injured parties. Subsequently found that they had been deceased and been shot. They were identified as a Coralie Smith and her father, Brad Downey. Through diligent investigation at the time, we determined there was a third party involved who was subsequently located a few hours later on the Commons, who had died of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Certainly, that party was identified as a 39-year-old male, Matthew Costain. Certainly, our thoughts are with the family at this time. I know the funeral was this week. Our thoughts remain with the family, and certainly to everyone in the community and everyone that was involved in that tragic incident. As well, on January 6th at 7:05 in the morning, we responded to a fatal pedestrian vehicle collision at the corner of Victoria Road and Chapel Street in Dartmouth. The pedestrian subsequently passed from those injuries, a 72-year-old male. A 30-year-old man was subsequently charged with failing to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. Again, our thoughts remain with him and his family. Certainly a very tragic circumstances. As you may have seen in the media over the holidays, Halifax Regional Police, in conjunction with the Retail Council of Canada, conducted a significant retail theft blitz in relation to retail theft, particularly in the downtown area of Halifax. Through enforcement, extra patrols, information, intelligent gathering, we ended up arresting 3 individuals who we identified as chronic offenders. We recovered hundreds of boxes and bags, of which we're still going through, of stolen merchandise worth tens of thousands of dollars, from a residence and as well as storage units. We will be continuing our efforts in conjunction with the Retail Council of Canada, and as well with our divisional commanders in the area. Retail theft is a significant concern at all times of the year, particularly over the holidays. It seems to ramp up. But the cross-departmental effort that went into uncovering those incidents from our patrol, QRU, CID, our community response officers, FIS, and crime analysis was significant, and I thank them for all that they have done. From a ongoing and recruitment perspective, I can tell you that on January 10th, our latest recruitment drive concluded, and I'm happy to say that we received 645 applications, which was on top of, I think it was roughly around 700 that we have gotten at our last go. That class is set to begin later this year. So I'm very thankful for, obviously, for those who've come forward, but also to all the staff and the volunteers and the civilians who came together to make that possible. We continue to also expand our experienced police officer program, and we certainly welcome anyone to inquire with our organization if they want to work for us. When we talk about gun violence, I can tell you at the end of 2024, we had 19 shooting incidents in our municipality within the areas governed by Halifax Regional Police, and in total, 408 firearms were subsequently seized or recovered in relation to our work ongoing. From a traffic perspective, we laid 18 charges for impaired operation of a motor vehicle and 6 suspensions for the first 3 weeks in December. We're still working on some of the tabulation from Operation Christmas. And this month is Intersection Safety Month. So we'll be working in that particular area. And as well, January is Crime Stoppers Month in Canada. If I remember correctly, Deputy Mayor, I do believe we were at an event last year honoring the Crime Stoppers folks. And certainly we always want to celebrate their organization and the great work they do in Nova Scotia. That's it for me, pending any questions or comments.
Is that on? Yes. With the incident that happened on New Year's Eve with the 2 fatals, the person who committed and also took his life, was he known to police?
He was known to police, certainly in Ontario.
I know in Ontario, yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted to hear.
we had very limited involvement with him here in our jurisdiction.
Okay. All right. Do you think that was sort of a disconnect? Because I mean, they were looking for him in Ontario apparently for something similar.
Yeah, they may have. They certainly there was certainly a warrant for his arrest for events in Ontario, but
Well, not
again, What's that?
but not worldwide or anything of that
Well,
nature.
Canada-wide.
Canada-wide, yeah.
It would be Canada-wide warrants, but again, at the end of the day, we had no information that says, or tips or anything that believe that he was here in terms of in our jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you, because he's been here for years, apparently. Yeah.
Apparently.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to follow up on the recruitment numbers. So not very far behind the last one,
Nope.
which is impressive. I'm appreciating that. Do you have a sense yet of, like, how often, I know the rotational thing, you're trying to keep one every, like, just keep it going, right? And how often do we see renewed applications for the next round? Like, how many, when you get a 700,
Yes.
they're vetted. Obviously, you can only take so many. How often do we see that renewal
So
and
they'll-
continued interest?
Yeah, so they'll create, they'll create the pool for applicants that will go through the process
Yeah.
for our next coming class. So, so we take the class that's currently in at Northbrook right now. They're, I believe, so they began in the
It
fall.
was the fall, yeah.
They began in the fall. That recruitment process had gone out until I think February of last year.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, the vetting process is significant. There's a significant amount of time. So with this particular class, so then we will go through this process. And then when this class comes in, we'll start another process
Yeah.
for the subsequent classes. So it'll be cyclical in
Yeah.
terms of, it's going forward.
Yeah, no, what I'm wondering, and maybe you don't have this number, how many people that would have been vetted out are reapplying for
Oh,
the next
okay,
round?
yeah.
What I'm trying to
Yeah.
get continued
No.
interest, do we have
Yeah.
some way to,
We would.
you can't take them all,
yeah.
and there might be some that
Yeah.
are
No, we would,
close,
we would certainly know through the process, those who have previously applied.
Yeah.
Or have been in the process. I don't have that number in front of me. But that's something that certainly that we know, and in
Yeah.
terms of, that would, certainly play into the process as we move
Yeah.
forward. But
for me, I'm trying to get to where, is there a sense, a good sense with data that we are continuing to be of interest
Yeah.
to people who may have just come short, shy of something? Is there something that do they get feedback that from you folks, and you don't have to answer this, this is just where my thought process is, that gives them a sense that, things are close, but, there's
Yeah,
a few
no,
things you
no.
can do, so reapply when these things
like
are
certainly,
finished.
it's a competitive process. I used to run human resources, so I know how it works.
Mhm.
Certainly, so it's a competitive process that people, are excluded at different periods, like, some are at the beginning and then some are
Okay.
farther down at the end. So it's sort of, you take a big pool as you widen
Yeah.
it down. But certainly, we can certainly find out in terms of the number of that, I guess, repeat applicants
Yeah.
that are in our process. We can bring it back and inform the board.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief, for that update. I'm intrigued by the retail event that you did. I guess the question is, that was pretty significant example that you used, but that's not as common, I trust. I mean, most of our downtown operations, Dartmouth and Halifax, the retail operations, those go in quick and grab. Do you have any stats around, I mean, there seems to be a reluctance or the perception of reluctance of police in following up on that. And I understand you're prioritizing things. It's the justice system really is the issue in many ways, in my interpretation of it, right? So even if you were to find someone who shoplifts or steals from a store, I mean, what happens to the average person that just simply shoplifts?
Well, I mean,
What's the deterrent?
I mean, the average person that simply shoplifts to be arrested would be released. That's a reality. Certainly in some of these, particular cases, when we talk about chronic offenders, we talk about the amount of the volume, the sheer volume of stolen merchandise that was found here speaks to a much greater organized sort of situation than that of just, the person who's, just stealing for, that just kind of does it off the side. So, so what we try to do is, and I know I think we were in discussions with the Crown yesterday about some of these things about, how do we address some of those things in terms of, we've over the years had programs around chronic offenders, those who continually
Right.
sort of, prey on the community and citizens. And sometimes it's not necessarily violent crime.
Right.
But the reality is, you can still be a chronic offender involved in property crime that has a significant impact on the community. And we need to look at doing certain things, whether it's, certainly it's, bail's one part of it, but certainly other things I think that can be done in terms of, conditions of curfew and all these other things that try to curb some of that behavior.
Right.
And that's stuff that we will, we continue to look at, because like I said, this is not a Nova Scotia or a Halifax issue.
Without question. Yep.
This is a Canadian issue.
Yeah.
I know when I speak with the other chiefs across the country, these issues are ripe in their experiences, across the board.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what, most of the issues we do talk about here are across the board, right? There's nothing really unique to HRM. Councillor Kent did ask my question about recruitment, but what's the maximum recruitment number each time? What's the number of cadets?
In our class?
Yeah.
Or it's roughly around 24, 25.
24, 25. And we're limited just because of our facility, right?
Well, we're limited by two things. One is facility.
Yep.
And the other is just the, staffing resources in terms of what it takes to put through, a great number of folk. We've sort of, because of what we do at the infrastructure and stuff that we do have, 24 seems to be, the 24, 25 seems to be a good number for us with the staff that we have to devote the time to them as well, right? Because we also rely on a lot of our other working staff to, deliver some of the training modules and programs that we have.
Right. I understand. So you take them off, what they normally do. Yeah. My last question, if I may, Mr. Chair, is around your numbers you shared with us. If I heard you correctly, 19 shootings and then 408 firearms seized. Do I have that correct? Out of the firearm, my first question is, there's two questions. Your first question, how does those numbers compare to previous years? The 19 shootings, 408 firearms seized. And the second part of my question is, when you look at those, the makeup of the 408 firearms, how many of those firearms are they're the, I don't know what the proper term is, the more of the automatic, the high performance kind of guns. I'm not sure the wording, so I wonder if you can help me with that.
So on the first, right now, I can't give you the makeup of I don't have that information in front of me. We can bring it back and I'll give it with the deputy. But from a shooting perspective, I can tell you that our the highest number of shooting incidents we ever had, I believe, was in 2012, 2011, 2012 was 48. In 2021, we had 47. We did some significant work that year after with Project Rock. Deputy Matthews remembers all the names of these things.
30 seconds, please, Commissioner.
Sure.
And so last year, I believe we were at 24. The year before that, I think, was 27. So it sort of fluctuates in terms. But I can tell you over the last, and I know this because I had looked at it, we average, since 2020, we've averaged 25 per year since 2020.
Okay.
And that's just in the HRP policed area. I believe I looked at it, if you include the RCMP area, we average about 34 a year.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Chief, for your briefing. Just want to follow up with the question asked by Commissioner Inch there. This individual that we mentioned and the event in December, this individual would have stayed in Nova Scotia, or specifically in Halifax, for a while. When information is received publicly, you had said Canada-wide, what do we do? And I'm just asking for best practice. I'm not sure how much you can disclose publicly. What do we do with such information? Do we provide such information to the public in terms of statistics, the name of this individual, who he is? Do we post this kind of things on the website? What do we do with information as those? Because if it's pushed to the public, at least if the public is aware. Last meeting, you recall that I mentioned public intelligence. I would have thought that something like this, somebody would have said something. It's a common thing today. You see something, you say something. When you share pictures of individuals like that, names and details of individual, everybody is looking out to support you. That's question number one. Question number two, you rightly stated, and you nailed it, the issue of theft in retail stores. Well, it is not even just catching those people, but the impact on the economy. A lot of businesses, people who hire 5, 2, 20, have closed their businesses because of theft. It is nationwide. We need to find a way to stop it. It is important, and this is part of what we say. I cannot even blame you. Where's the manpower to police all stores? That month, there, this, that. These are critical issues. So I'm even looking at the economic impact, not just that fact that people are caught and released. It's worldwide. It's not nationwide, and it's spreading. How can we stop this? Because we're losing business. People invest in their business. They lose all the things they have to put people together, and people are losing their jobs. We're putting more people on the street. Thank you.
Commissioner, so to your first question, I think we have to write it. There are, I don't know what the exact number, but there are thousands of Canada warrants that are current. We generally would not advertise warrants that come from another jurisdiction because we wouldn't have actually information about the actual file. In terms of, there are times when we're looking for individuals locally, in terms of for events that have occurred locally, that we would communicate, but we'll go through an actual process and a determination as to, what, based on what it is and what we're looking for. And so you'll see that occasionally in terms of you looking for someone involved. But generally speaking, if someone does something, gets charged in another jurisdiction, it would be that jurisdiction's responsibility in terms of putting out information in terms of, where they would. Yeah, I don't even know about this. You can speak about it, but generally speaking, in terms of, I think if we probably did communications on everyone in Canada who was wanted on the Canada-wide warrant, we probably wouldn't have time to do anything else in terms of what would be actually broadcast. But yeah.
Question was, how much information was shared? If they don't share information with you, how would you know? I mean, what's the population of people in Halifax or in Nova Scotia? I just want to know what kind of information is shared when we have things like that. It's Canada-wide, somebody is running from one place, it's being looked for from one province, and they know he's out in other provinces. It's dangerous to other provinces. What kind of information is shared, and how much of that, how much of the information can be shared with public, so that the public can also support the police? Thank you.
Commissioner, just to add to what Chief McLean has articulated, we've got elements in our integrated criminal investigative division with our HEAT units. That's a high risk enforcement action team, that they have strong relationships with other police agencies across Canada. And if we were to be made known of someone in the area that has a warrant for something such as this, they would be the point persons to execute that warrant, put efforts in to try and locate that person. We're also, Halifax Regional Police, and I believe the RCMP are also partners with the BOLO program, which is a third-party initiative that promotes interagency sharing of information around people who are arrestable or have warrants for the high-level offenses relating to public safety. So we participate in that. We have people on the boards for that. So that's another way that we can exchange information interjurisdictionally. The other, and I don't want to speak for this one case in particular, but there are times when the originating agency may not know where that person is in the country either. So we don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and we may not know that they're in our jurisdiction either based on that. So we do regularly with our criminal investigative division, if there is information that there's someone in our area, we act on that information.
You would all recall the last incident in New York. This guy was even traced to Canada. They shared all the information concerning this guy. Why is it here? If there's a warrant on an individual in Canada that cannot be shared amongst other chiefs, states, mayors, that everybody. The event in New York is a clear cause of that. Not one, not two in the US. That people immediately they share those informations on cell phones, on television. Why should we not do the same thing here in Canada to prevent such occurrence in the future? If I can recall, the commissioner said, this individual, I don't know, I'm not sure, have been here for 1 year or two. Wow, that's dangerous. We need to find a way to stop things like this. Thank you.
Vice Chair O'Malley, please.
Thank you, Chief. I actually had a question in the same area of the incidents of the 31st. Most of it's been answered, but I did want to ask a little bit of a follow-up. But before doing that, I did want to comment that the chair and myself visited the cadet training program yesterday, and we spent several hours there. We were very impressed with the program that's being run, the instructors. It was a great experience, and compliments you for how well that is structured and how well and efficient it's running. And I think it's a great program. I think it's great that we're doing that. Pardon me? That's a different story. Commissioner Hinch and Commissioner Akindoju asked a number of questions there, and I was in Calgary at the day before there, and the exact same thing played out. 2 people were killed. Intimate partner violence, and then the person who committed the violence took their life. Then the exact same thing plays out here in Halifax. It was quite alarming, and I was quite shocked about the outstanding warrant issue. Question: I know there's CPIC, and that's a mechanism for sending out warrants, and you have to go to the terminal to put in the person's information to then find out whether there's a warrant on the individual. And I appreciate the high risk ones that they become aware of and share that. Is there any connection, and maybe someone who's got a Canada-wide warrant doesn't do this, but do they potentially go out and try and apply for a Nova Scotia driver's license? Do they try and apply for any services, and before those services are offered to somebody, we check to see whether there's any warrants available, so that be a way to set a flag off? Is there any integration with systems in that regard? That would be the extent of my comments, questions.
Yeah, so to the commissioner, so access to CPIC is very limited. It's very limited to the law enforcement. Canadian Border Services, I believe, has it. But those type of agencies, generally, those agencies are not engaged in, day-to-day, like getting a driver's license or applying for a rental, residence, or, you could ask for a criminal records check for work purposes for certain things. But then that obviously is dependent on the person actually, going through the process. But generally speaking, CPIC, CPIC checks on individuals are restricted for law enforcement purposes only.
Thank you. That's unfortunate. I mean, I think there's an opportunity there for some services that government delivers to be made aware of that, because potentially these people can be picked up a little more efficiently than waiting for them to reoffend and to get picked up by a law enforcement officer.
Thank you. Commissioner Kent.
Yes, thank you. I just want to follow up on the training and recruitment piece. Commissioner Mancini and I both spoke to 2 questions. One, in your mind and array of strategic priorities, would you see with the development of a new headquarters, that training such as that might be incorporated within that envelope, or would that remain in the Dartmouth area or wherever you choose for it? Are we at a state where you would be looking forward to changing that? The second part of that question is related to future strategic priorities. Do you see the trainer aspect, which is what you mentioned was a part of the limitation, is those that would vet and throughout the process and training? Do you see that as critical for our recruitment strategy?
Yeah, so to the first question, in terms of, both commissioners were there yesterday. It's an old school. I mean, we're utilizing an old school that serves its purpose. but it certainly wasn't purposely built for police training, but we've made the best of it. I went through training with the Halifax Regional Police back in 1992. And we did all our training at headquarters on Goshen Street. In terms of what we use now as our boardroom was a classroom. We actually had a functioning gym downstairs that, now is a big part of it is the locker room because, growth and all that other stuff. So certainly development of a new facility that will be some of the things that we would look at to be incorporated, things that were purposely built for purposeful, purposes, for lack of a better word. What was your second question again?
Your trainers.
The trainers, yes.
To develop those.
Yes, so
more of
certainly,
those.
so I think, so what we've seen, so last year, this board and council was generous enough to give us a new body, which really helped to that piece. I think actually to, adding a sergeant to the position was obviously very important as well. And this year we're looking for a body in terms of on the administrative side to help with that process. Because again, that's very important in terms of, like I said, because a lot of it is trying to take, the work gets done regardless. It's sometimes where it comes from. Sometimes it comes from, borrowing from Peter and Paul to, all this other. So we actually want to build a strong, established, committed team that can deal with some of those things. And as we continue to build, we'll continue to look to see what is necessary to best advance that.
Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I just wanted to follow up with my questions around the number of shootings and the firearms, and I was asking about a breakdown of the type of firearms. And I think that's important for us here at the Commission to understand. In this meeting today, we're going to be talking about other resources that you've asked for, and that's going to be in the budget. I look at, I keep leaning towards, I think it's the assault rifles, that type of the AR-15s, the AK-47s. Are we seeing those kinds of weapons in some of these seizures?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, like in Halifax Regional Municipality, we definitely have seen those. It's not at the point now where it is a overly regular occurrence, but I would say, with a little bit of conversation with our Guns and Gangs unit and looking at some of the seizures in detail, we can get back to you. But it's not completely unusual to come across those type of firearms.
I think it's just really important that we understand that, because when we talk about, we're going to be later on, we're going to be talking about your request for the rescue vehicle and why that's important to understand that those types of weapons may be part of the equation. So maybe the next time, Chief, you come in and you report on that, if you could give us a breakdown, that'd be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Akandojo, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's an old adage that says, once bitten, twice shy. I'm going back to the same question. I just want to ask, what has changed based on that experience? Because if nothing has changed, it will occur again. May occur tomorrow. What would we say as police commissioners or as the chief that we spoke about this today, and somebody's found his way through into Halifax or Nova Scotia and committed something, somebody with a warrant? So my question is, what has changed since then? Is there a policy change? Is there something you need us to do? Because we're not here to just throw questions at you. We're here to change situations to make this world safer for all of us. For me, for you, Don, because you have a family too. What can we do? It will continue to happen. You're right. The landmass is big. What has changed, or what do we need as a body together to cause changes whereby people like that will be pronounced, will be advertised, will be told to the public, will be aware, and somebody will say something. Thank you very much, Don.
To the commission, I think fundamentally the question has to come around to, there has to be an awareness that an individual is actually in a jurisdiction. I don't know in terms of, from an actual, we don't track people provincially in terms across this country, not like the border, not like somewhere, I can go to any province in this in this country without having to do anything in terms of being, so really it comes down to, from a more of a public position in terms of, if you know something, tell someone, whether it's through Crime Stoppers or something else in terms of that sort of situation. I don't know what formalized process we can put in place in terms of tracking individuals across. Certainly, if we become aware of information in terms of, like the deputy mentioned, in terms of our communications with other police departments is fine in terms of, if you're aware of the actual information, but you have to become aware of it first. And I think, in terms of, is it about that we,
And that's what I'm addressing, Chief.
Yeah.
I'm addressing how can you be made aware
Yeah.
so that you can share the information.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
point. I mean, somebody knows, somebody knew. How can we help? Who do we need to talk to? That nationwide, not just Halifax, not just Nova Scotia. How can such information, what must be done to share that information publicly? Somebody knows his name, his color, his height, his dad, has his picture, he has a word. What needs to be done now to make you aware, and then you can pass the information? We've done it well here. When things happen locally, you raise the alarm and people help. So what can we do in this regard? Because it's going to happen again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hinch.
So, two things. So back to what Commissioner Akindoshi was discussing. So was there a Canada-wide warrant for this person? There was. So my question is, and I don't know, I could be just thinking out there, like a website of some sort that people can look at from time to time to see. Because I mean, again, there are people that are in our community that people are concerned about what they might do and what they might, if they just recently come to the community or things like that, and they're off. Is there a website that could possibly, where they could go to see maybe if this person is wanted somewhere else, if the name comes up, if we should be telling the police about this person and how they feel about this person in the community? That's my first question. My second question was the training classes, when they graduate, say all 24, 25 graduate, are they automatically offered jobs
if they're successful, yes.
if they're successful within the HRP?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And to your first question, in terms of, again, I think we have to recognize, the scope of, like I said, there are probably tens of thousands of people that are wanted on warrants across this country, and in terms of, and where that resides in terms of jurisdiction, in terms of, what that would look like in terms of, people who are wanted out of Ontario or wanted out of BC or wanted out of these other places. I think, like you say, I think the BOLO program is one particular place that has some specific individuals that are on it.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly it's not exhaustive to everyone, because it would be a monumental sort of undertaking in terms of, CPIC is the repository of information that's up, but like I said, that's that's not a public accessible site. That's a very restrictive,
Okay.
that we've already spoken of in terms of. So I think, I think even in some of the other cities, like, they will have individuals on certain watchouts for certain periods of time based on what it is and what they've done and all those other things. But
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is, I don't think there's no system that's going to contain everyone that's going to be publicly available that's wanted, because it would, like I say, would be a massive sort of undertaking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Superintendent Moser, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Thank you very much. Also to our gallery participants there and the folks that are joining us virtually. Been about a month or so since we provided an update, as Chief McLean had mentioned. So I'm just going to go through some of the more significant incidents here. And I apologize, it won't be a hard and fast timeline, but I'm going to try and stick to sort of a bit of a timeline since December, but I may go off. I do want to acknowledge that horrific event between New Year's and New Year's Eve and the New Year's Day. And on behalf of Halifax Regional Detachment, certainly offer our condolences to those affected by those tragic events. And I do want to just shine some visibility on the fact that our Halifax Regional Detachment North Preston office, because there was a strong connectivity to that community, which we recognize, they've been actively supporting that community and the families to the degree possible, and in line with their wishes there through those difficult events. That support continues in the fashion that's appropriate for that community in the way they wish. Also on New Year's Eve, we responded to ourselves responded to an intimate partner violence-related aggravated assault. And that event actually took place in the Musquodoboit Harbor Porters Lake area, which you may have seen some media information on that. An adult female there was very seriously injured, and the subject that was responsible for that fled. There was initial attempts to locate that suspect, which were unsuccessful, and then very quickly, or as quickly as we could, obtained an arrest warrant for that person. So January 2nd, we were informed, we came into possession of information of a male who was threatening suicide with a firearm, and that was at a Porters Lake residence. Our critical incident program was activated. We did a risk assessment based on the information we had at the time, knowing that there was potential for a firearm there. So the RCMP's critical incident program supported our frontline Halifax Regional Attachment team. Number of attempts to establish communications with whom we believe to be the suspect. That those attempts were unfortunately negative. We were unable to establish communication. We ended up making entry into that residence, and we located a male deceased by a firearm there. We believe suicide as well. So just want to acknowledge that incident, because I think it just underscores some of the unfortunate environment that we're in right now, and how that impacts the communities, impacts across all policing agencies. On January 11th as well, apologize if this is all sort of sitting in very heavy news there. You would have seen information related to a fatal house fire in Lower Sackville. Halifax Regional Detachment was part of a combined response with fire and EHS to that particular incident. Three children are moved from that residence, and were transported to the IWK in critical condition. But I want to actually point out that was done under Halifax Regional Detachment, an HRP police escort, by the way, to try to expedite, that transport. You would have also heard an update on that tragically 3 of those children have since passed away. There's an adult male that was also transported to hospital, and I think he remains under care there. I know fire is actually the primary lead on that file. It was deemed non-suspicious relatively quickly there, but we continue to support them in their efforts there. But I wanted to mention that particular significant impact to the community, and the impact it would have on our members that would respond to that as well. So deepest condolences to the family and the community on that. So we are applying, and I know that Commissioner Mancini shows a particular interest in the wellness supports on that. So a deliberate effort to make sure that those wraparounds are provided in the wake of that. Pardon me. December the 28th, you would have also been made aware, perhaps if you were tracking the news over the holidays, there was an incident at Halifax International Airport, what was deemed to be a hard landing with an aircraft. HRD is one of the primary response agencies, emergency response agencies, to support the response to those. So we're supporting Transport Safety Board's investigation to that. There's fairly significant hard landing, flames, smoke that way caused an emergency evacuation of an aircraft. We directly supported that evacuation, and then provided scene security for the investigative aspect of that, in partnership with Transport Safety Board. Fortunately, no injuries, which was wonderful, but an interruption to services at the airport, which I'm sure other agencies will have spoken to. But wanted to point out that response to that's kind of part of the catchment for what our detachment is responsible for supporting. January 1st, unfortunately, a significant impaired driving incident in Sackville. We responded to the report of an impaired driver at a business at approximately 3:23 in the afternoon. and that was on New Year's Day. The driver had struck a building with her vehicle and was then witnessed falling asleep at the wheel. So our frontline folks interceded, and as a result, that driver was charged with impaired driving. But I mention it only because there's no shortage, unfortunately, of these incidents and interceding and catching and charging people. But in this particular occasion, she was 4 times the legal limit, and that's a pretty significant readings on our tools we use to analyze blood alcohol content on that. But good work on that, but shows that those concerns still are ever present on our roadways. January 9th, there another firearm incident in HRM, discharge of a firearm that was in the Lower Sackville area. Multiple reports of gunshots fired at a residence in the Lower Sackville area, and with the vehicle speeding away. Our watch members, assisted by our street crime enforcement team, responded quite expeditiously, located a suspect vehicle, fortunately. Subsequently, 2 people arrested, taken into custody for discharging a firearm, and a handgun was seized from that vehicle, by the way. And then a subsequent search of a residence that located what was we believe to be a replica firearm, ammunition, CDSA materials as well. But fortunately, in that case, no injuries. That matters before the courts, but another significant concerning incident involving firearms as well. I'll leave things, well, hopefully, at least to the degree possible, on a more positive note, under really terrible circumstances. On January 3rd, we refer to as the highly anticipated annual North Preston All-Stars versus RCMP hockey game. And that was in Cole Harbour Place, hosted that. Thank you to them. The Preston All-Stars came out on top. I think they gave our team a proper thrashing, but all in good fun there. The consensus that was in everybody sitting in some heavy circumstances in that community, considered to be, to the degree possible, a bit more uplifting and a good engagement opportunity with that community and our folks as well. But that was certainly needed during some troubling times. So shows some of the benefits of that engagement and making sure we're interfacing. So I'll leave it at that, but I certainly do happy to make myself available for any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Commissioner Kent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question as much as a comment on in relation to the scope of work that we are repeatedly reminded of with these updates. Otherwise, we may not always know the degree of it. To know that you were able to be part of a very tragic situation, house fire, in a way that helped expedite those children and that family member to get to the hospitals through our city is really, it's a really important piece, but it's not necessarily one that we hear about a lot. And we've debated here and we've seen reports on the kinds of impact that those varying situations taken its toll on members. Even here, us all sitting here and knowing that the degree of which the loss is for that family, I can't imagine how that impacts. No, I can imagine, frankly, how that impacts our members. So I'm glad to hear it, because just by virtue of that particular escort makes you feel like at least you're doing something to maybe to fend off the fatality of it. The other piece is that we listen here as well again to you talk about the firearms and the reality of that being here in our city, and so many of us go to sleep every night not really even giving it any thought. So these updates are really, really important for that. I don't think I need to add any more other than I would really appreciate a skybox next time you have that hockey game. And I would very much appreciate watching that kind of thrashing happen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Moser. You know that I was going to ask a question about mental health, and I will continue to ask questions about mental health today and in this position, and whether I'm a counselor for all of our business units. particularly our first responders. Can you give us the process? So you talked about a couple of major incidents where someone took his own life. You talked about the horrible fire, and this fire, I talked to firefighters and police officers when we hear about these incidents come up, it brings up trauma again that may have happened to them 10, 20 years ago. And so can you walk me through the process when you have these types of incidents, how it works with the RCMP? How do we also make sure that we're not just checking in on the day of the next day, because there may be a delay when that trauma comes up to that member, maybe weeks or months down the road. So can you just walk me through the process so I understand that?
Yes, thank you for your question, Commissioner. And I want to say that we remain ever grateful that you keep asking.
You're welcome.
So the, pardon me, the wellness piece, those wellness supports, obviously critically important, and there is a sort of systemic approach to that. And fortunately, I've got Inspector Jeff Mitchell next to me in his portfolio. He champions that for us, and it's an opportunity perhaps for him to sort of unpack a little bit about what that looks like. If you would be kind enough to indulge him, I think he can help that, and I'll be happy to add any value to that if Jeff wishes.
Thank you, Inspector.
Through you, Chair, to Commissioner Mancini. So we engage the support services that we have spoken to before out of our divisional headquarters situated at 80 Garland Avenue. And that includes a wellness team within the health services portfolio at headquarters. All of our members and supervisors across the HRD that work on a daily basis are very well attuned to events like this and the impact that they can have on employees. Typically, directly following an event like this, it triggers a phone call and a touch into those wellness resources at headquarters. Those wellness resources within that, oftentimes that very same day, and followed up, as you had mentioned, the importance of following up days later with what kind of supports are needed at the detachment level, whether that Superintendent Mosier spoke to the critical incident in Musquodoboit Harbor, whether that involves a critical incident debriefing with a large group of people so that everyone gets to have an input. So we're very much engaged. Obviously, as you know, lessons learned from past incidents in 2020, the Mass Casualty Commission, the importance of wellness brought to the fold. I thank you for bringing it up. It's a living conversation that we have to have on a daily basis. I can say from experience that during morning debriefings and preparing members to go on the road that day, the wellness piece is always spoken about. The environment is changing than it was, say, when I started and when Superintendent Mosier started, that these things are talked about, maybe sometimes not often enough, but the supports are there at divisional headquarters, and we're looking to bolster a support to that in HRD by identifying resources that we can deploy immediately as part of a wellness package. But we're working on that process as part of my portfolio. Last thing I'll say on that, Commissioner Mancini, is during our program planning meetings, our POW-POM, we call it, in Oak Island this year, the theme of that was wellness and mental health. Many of the people, the keynote speakers that we brought in, focused on wellness for all categories of employees, because as you know, it's not just the frontline members, but it's also the support staff. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Inspector. One quick question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, both of you. You alluded to, Superintendent, about the impaired driving example. Where are we with that impaired driving in comparison to previous years? Were we less of it? Are we seeing more of it? It's plateaued. Can you give us, do you have any sense of overall where we are?
Yeah, I'd defer to Inspector Mitchell if he's got the data handy. Certainly my sense is it continues to, I would use the word scourge of impaired driving on our roadways. I think it remains consistently one of the primary causations for serious injuries and fatalities. And you'll probably, if not already, you will have seen today that on the provincial side of the RCMP, a media release media opportunity speaking to the number of serious injuries and fatalities at a all-time high on our Nova Scotia highways. And I am very comfortable saying that impaired driving will play a part in that. I can unpack that with some time as far as data, but between enforcement, education, those will, I would suggest, those are efforts that will need to continue to be invested in. It's the ability to have the capacity, the capability to detect some and respond to information from the public, but ourselves proactively detecting those things through checkpoints, joint operations, and just to make sure that obviously we all share the roads, we all have families, we all want to make sure that we have a safe community to live, work, and play in, and only end by saying, that work doesn't stop, and it certainly isn't, to my knowledge, declining.
Thank you, Superintendent. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Other questions for Superintendent? Thank you. For your submissions and for your answers to the Commissioner's questions. Pointed always and gratefully received. Our next agenda item is 10.2, and we're into the budget debate a couple of times, and we'll recess for 10 minutes while we reorient ourselves to that debate. Call the meeting back to order, please. We're on agenda item 10.2.1, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Halifax Regional Detachment, 2025-2026 resource request. I'm going to read the motion before we engage in any discussion. That the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend that the HRM Budget Committee support the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax Regional Detachment resource request for additional 14 regular member positions as part of the budget deliberations for the 2025-2026 operating budget as set out in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated January 8th, 2025. Rather than asking Superintendent Mosier to comment extemporaneously on the budget request, and bearing in mind that there have already been 2 presentations verbally and 1 comprehensive written presentation, I'm going to ask the superintendent if there is anything new in those budget materials.
Thank you very much, Chair. No further submissions, but thank you for asking.
Okay. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Kent, a
Yes.
seconder, please.
Can I read? I'll read the motion.
Yes.
I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend that the HRM Budget Committee support the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax Regional Detachment RCMP HRD resource request for additional 14 regular member positions as part of the budget deliberations for the 2025-26 operating budget as set out in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated January 8th, 2025.
So moved by Commissioner Kent, seconded by Commissioner Hinch. Before we embark on the discussion, which will be important, I want to make a couple of general comments. First and foremost, this is not a determination which I will make as chair. This is a determination which the commission will make on the basis of a majority decision. And in doing that, the commission will keep in mind, as Commissioner Akindoju likes to remind us, we'll keep in mind that this is public money being spent, but that our responsibility is not so much in the guarding this expenditure of public money as it is in ensuring a safe and just community and society. And a week ago, we received a number of public presentations. I think there were 28 of them in number. And most of those speakers urged us to reject the budget asks on the basis that resources could probably be spent on a kinder and more just society. And speaking only for myself, I doubt that there is anybody sitting at this table or in this room that doubts the requirement that we all have for a kinder and more just society. And all of us would believe that there must be a better way to deal with homelessness. None of us savor the notion of young people no longer having the aspiration of owning their own home. None of us care to think about the fact that senior citizens oftentimes have to make determinations about paying rent or paying for heat or buying groceries or buying medications. But those are not the issues, unfortunately, for this commission. And it would be difficult, if not impossible, I suggest, given our statutory mandate, for us to make determinations about reduction of policing budgets and resources in favor of other aspects which we all know might serve to make our society kinder and more just. So all of those comments certainly have their place, and all of those comments do not lose validity just because of the subject matter to which they've been attempted to pertain. That being said, there were a couple of comments last week that I think bear some rebuttal. One was that in every situation in which the police involve themselves, the situation goes badly or worse than it would otherwise have been. Every situation is every situation. And although it's a personal prepossession and a personal belief, I don't believe that. When a constable with her own pocket money buys a bag of groceries for a homeless person living in a tent in Horseshoe Island, that is not making anything worse. When a police constable or police constables are the first of the first responders and they assist in extricating people from burning vehicles or from burning houses, they are not making things worse. And there are many, many attributes of what police do which make things better. It happens day in and day out, as in when they're in a fire-ravaged community and they're going door to door to door to door at great risk to themselves to make sure that those doors are empty and that the people inside of those doors don't need assistance. The other thing which troubled me, and which I confessed to my spouse the following morning kept me awake all night, was the suggestion that there have only been 2 police shootings in the last 20 years. So what's the big deal? As if Constable Heidi Stevenson was not just a public servant, but was a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a colleague, and a friend. Almost as if her life didn't make any difference because it was just one life. Or Sergeant Derek Burkholder was not a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a colleague, and a friend. It's very difficult to hear people marginalize those who, by the very dint of their existence, put their lives on the line for all of us on a day by day by day basis. I will conclude by referencing an op-ed piece in this morning's Herald, referring to police officers as uniformed bullies. I don't believe that any of the situations that I just canvassed off the top of my head are indicative of bullying tactics. And I quite frankly would have expected better from the Chronicle Herald, not so much that I resist anybody's right to make whatever comment they want, but because I insist as a member of this community that people make their comments at least in good taste. Those comments having been made, I'm going to call on the commissioners for their presentations or for their comments with respect to what I refer to generally as the RCMP ask.
Start with me. Thank you.
Commissioner Kent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we've had an opportunity to have a very fulsome consideration of the request. I very much appreciate both RCMP and HRP hearing and listening to us over the years about our need for information. That has improved significantly, and I think it has allowed for me certainly to come to a decision of support much more easily or not. What for RCMP, they're asking for 14 new FTEs, and I will be supporting those. I particularly am pleased to see the approach that these FTEs will be taking in the way of policing through community policing offices. Community policing offices, in my opinion, are the way to go for certainly the jurisdiction of the RCMP, be it vast and geography is vital when you're making a service delivery decision in that service. I know that from talking with colleagues and hearing and looking at the information that is available around the need in Musquodoboit Harbor, Sheet Harbor, Beachville, Fall River, is it's important for these communities to know and see and become a partner in community safety with our policing members, the RCMP in this case. So I will be supporting this. I appreciate that there will be still work to do to beyond just the member addition to achieve the office space and considerations for where and how quickly can we move these forward. Still more to be done on that, but this to me is the way to go. I have I live in a community that is also served by police. I represent a community that's served by RCMP. I represent a community, a district that is represented by both HRP and RCMP. And both policing services, I believe, are taxed in ways that they haven't in generations. The delivery of service has to change as well with the nature of the crimes and the nature of the planning and development and growth, the nature of the impacts of climate change. All of those things come into play when our police services, in particular our chiefs and their executive teams, are looking forward. So I'll be supporting this. I look forward to hearing from my other colleagues here on the commission, and I'll leave it right there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Commissioner Akindoju, please.
My chair, I'm going to yield until we get to the HRP, because I'm probably going to say the same thing. So it's not to waste your time. I have nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Are there other commissioners who wish to speak to the RCMP ask? Vice Chair O'Malley, please.
Thank you. I wanted to thank them, the RCMP, for the supplemental information that they provided. Although it's not an exact science trying to figure out resourcing, the history of call for service activities in the various communities, how it's evolved over time, is one indicator, I guess, is where investments in resourcing need to be made. I just wanted to ask a couple of small clarification questions on that, 'cause that was just received recently, if you don't mind. When I look at the numbers, and I'm going to speak to those in a second in terms of how it influences my decision here, but when it shows average response times in the second last column, for the community as a whole, let's just look at the one at the top, Cole Harbour, for example. It says a number of 8. And then underneath it lists the individual zones inside of that area, if I'm using the right terminology. The sub communities within inside Cole Harbour. There are obviously larger numbers. I'm just trying to understand, what does the first number represent? 8 what? What are the units there? Is that an average? What actually is that?
Commissioner, thank you very much for your question. I'm going to actually just defer over to Jeff on the data piece there, because he's sort of our good collator of that information, but I'd be happy to add any value after his comments if you wish.
Thank you, Superintendent Mosier. Through you, Chair, to the Vice Chair. If I could look, so the average response time when we calculated it for HRD, I think I might have mentioned it to you last meeting, was 24 minutes as an average if we look at the entire district. It is important to note, when we looked at these, the life of a call to dispatch. So these, it's important to note that it's the time the officer was dispatched to the call, because for the public to understand, when someone calls into a dispatch center, that call has to be generated and typed by a call taker and then transferred over to a dispatcher. So the life of the call, it was important for us to break down the response time from the time that a member was dispatched to a call. The particular zones, and I believe we provided a legend for each zone, depicting the, say, in the Cole Harbour area. So response times would vary depending on the particular zone. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but obviously if Cole Harbour Detachment had to respond to Eastern Passage, for example, which is further driving time and so on, the average call times are going to be increased in that area. Whereas if it's Colby Village, right within Cole Harbour, one would expect the response time to be quicker. Did that answer your question?
Not quite. As I go across the columns, like for example, for Cole Harbour, the top line shows the aggregate of all the different communities underneath. And when I go over to the far right of the table, I just didn't understand what, in each of these cases of the summary row for the area, what the value represented. So for Cole Harbour, we see response times of 17, 26, 16, 24, 26, 22, and yet the average up top is 8. So I just didn't understand what that number is supposed to represent.
I had to rely on my much smarter statistical analyst, Miss Callie Garnett. She tells me that that's a typo, Commissioner O'Malley. That actually came from another digit, but we would be happy to run that number for you. So that number, you are correct, and I know you are a statistician yourself. If you aggregate those average response times, that number would be higher. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you. And then the other question that I had related to the last column, population changes. And I was surprised to see a couple of areas with double-digit declines. And I just wanted to, because it's relevant in terms of looking at the beach, the Beachville, Lakeside, Timberlea areas numbers in the request. So are these all? What is the source, I guess, of the population numbers in the areas, and are these accurate? So for example, we're seeing some under the, which is it, Musquodoboit, 23%
Vice Chair.
decrease. Is that correct? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, to the Commissioner, yes, the numbers are correct, and the metrics are from HRM's own population metrics staff.
Thank you. And I'll just wait till another round.
Are there other questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Hinch, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With the satellite office, the request that you're asking for the 6 FTEs for Beachville in particular, was there community engagement? I'm pretty sure you said there were, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Commissioner, thank you very much for your question. Yes, there was community engagement, regular contact, not only with the previous counselor in that area, but the current incumbent in that role, but deliberate community engagement facilitated through the Nova Scotia RCMP commanding officers apology initiative on street checks. So I believe a town hall facilitated in that community, and stakeholders invited, and feedback garnered with respect to that. So that was one of the, I would call it the keynote engagement piece for that area, that we would be drawing some of our information.
Okay. How many people were attended that? Do you know?
Unfortunately, Commissioner, I don't have that at hand, but I can certainly determine it. But I understood there was a good engagement on it, but I'd have to look into that to know exactly who.
Okay. So I mean, I realize that, you guys have a good relationship with North Preston now, but I'm sure it was something that was worked on for quite a number of years before they got to a point. So I'm kind of on the fence with the number of FTEs that you want in the communities. Also with that, with the bodies, does it come with, new vehicles, things like that? Is that will that be a requirement as well?
Yeah, again, Commissioner, thank you. Very insightful. And sort of that six full-time employee model enables, let's say, in community, like a supervisor and then a critical mass of regular members, keeping in mind the leave and off-duty sick pressures, those other things that go on in people's lives to maintain that critical mass of that operating model. But in addition to that, also a public servant who would be there facilitating and supporting what we call front counter services, those things where you can actually come in, talk to employee in that office, and then start to sort of unpack their needs as far as public safety. And of course, the North Preston model, you're right. I would say it has taken, and we would expect that those models will evolve as the community evolves in their needs. And, a lot of lessons learned as we've moved through that model. But in speaking personally, actually, with the NCO in charge of that office today, we're tracking in the right direction with that community, and all signal checks with the community. We're told, we're very effective. And that's really what we're trying to model, deliver in the Beachville, Lakeside, Timberley area, to try to respond to that community, fitting it up to its needs. And we think that response model will really benefit that community based on the feedback that we're getting. You did ask a question, and I would thank you very much, about vehicles and those types of things. Those come with those things are, I say, some folks that know me will laugh when I say those are baked into those positions, that they would come with vehicles, they would come with radios, they would come with those pieces that would support the work that they do in their frontline and in community response roles. So that's helpful, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the other thing is that I know that we don't have actual numbers for the RCMP, and I know it's part of a budget that we pay for, or if I'm understanding that. So I'm just wondering, and maybe I'm never going to know the number or whatever that means, but when it comes to approving a budget, from what we see here, there's a lot more to it. I would think, not just the bodies, but more equipment, more everything of that nature.
Again, thank you, Commissioner. And if I don't want to make assumptions, but I infer in your comments that with those full-time FTEs come all of those wraparound pieces that enable them to do their work. And I think some of it was, hopefully effectively unpacked by the Department of Justice, and how they presented the breakdown of what that all-in cost is for each of those full-time employees.
And again, I'm still learning, so thank you for answering.
No, of course, ma'am. We commit to making sure that you remain informed, and
I
happy
appreciate
to help
that.
you with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair O'Malley, second time, please.
My apologies. I wanted to say that I scrutinized through the call for service. I like the data. I'd like to see where the trends are. And it's quite clear that the data from the Fall River, Sackville area will definitely benefit from additional resources in the community in terms of response time in both communities. And so that makes complete sense to me. And then I can see from the population growth, as you guys identified, in the BLT area, as it's affectionately labeled in the key, as well, because the population growth would benefit from it. I did get some feedback, and I sat on the Canada Game Center board for 6 years. Recreation and the importance of it in the community is very dear to my heart, and I'd want to make sure that you consult with the community out there. I know that facility was already designed with purpose. Probably every square footage of that facility is earmarked by the community for a particular function, and I wouldn't want to see the community lose any valuable short resource programming space for a late stage planned use of the space. So please make sure you consult with the members of the community out there and choose space wisely. But otherwise, I think the ask is well justified. Thank you.
Commissioner, if I may, thank you very much. And your comments are well taken, and we'll certainly take that back. And I just a really quick two-part quick response with respect to those response times. I think you're quite right. I think you've been very insightful in interpreting those numbers, and how I would say the collateral benefits of those models, how how that will assist the whole response system. Certainly the qualitative benefits of being in those communities, well, I think we've unpacked and articulated, but the collateral benefits to the adjacent communities obviously will benefit from that modeling and that movement as well. And you have my commitment, Halifax Regional Detachment's commitment, that we will work in partnership with the community and in HRM to make sure that that model is what they need.
Thank you. I acknowledged Commissioner Kent for the second time, but I think Commissioner Mancini, you have not gone.
I have not, Mr. Chair.
I'd like you to go first,
Oh,
please.
Thank you. Just for very, very quickly, I'm actually have a lot more to say when we get to the next agenda item, HRP. RCMP is not in my district, so I'm not as familiar as I am with what's going on with HRP, but I do want to make a couple of comments. The community policing offices, I wasn't that familiar with it, so I did reach out to some of my colleagues that in the area. In fact, District 1 Councillor Kathy Daigle-Gammon is in the room here, and I did speak to her about it, and she feels very strongly the importance of having that office in her area, and her community really truly wants that. So I just want to make that comment. I'm really intrigued by the intimate partner violence investigators that you're adding. And that's such a topic that's front and center. I mean, both the chief and the superintendent, you talked about incidents that happened, updated were exactly that topic. And so it takes more than just policing to address that for sure. I see our friends from the Department of Justice here. And so it's a topic I want to make sure it's always front and center at Board of Police Commission. And my ask here is when you do your updates, if you could, Superintendent, to give us an update on what's happening on that topic, what's happening with these new investigators, if this is approved. I just think it's important that we continually talk about that topic here at the Board of Police Commission. So
That's in year 2, right?
Yep, it's in year 2 though, right? I understand that, but it's still, it's something they're leaning on, and both the chief and superintendent, we can have that as a regular topic item to discuss. I think it's extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner, and thank you for the clarification. That is, I would say, next year's ask for sure, but we'll acknowledge the support council in seating those 2 positions for our IPV specialized team in the previous budget year. That is, we're very pleased to say that is, hopefully we're near the end zone of the staffing process on that, but the lights are turned on in that program right now, and I'll be happy to come back to the board and report on outcomes and performance and our tangible efforts to support that response to IPV community-wide for sure. Thank you.
And I know we're talking to RCMP, but I would ask Chief McLean also to give us updates on that same topic. I think it's really important for our citizens to know too.
We've called for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Are there any abstentions? The motion's carried. Superintendent and Inspector, thank you so much for the efforts, for the comprehension which has been brought to this budgetary process. It's extremely gratifying for the people who sit at this table to have chapter and verse on the ask, why the ask has been made, and the benefit which will flow from the ask. So I speak for everybody around this table when I say thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for the board's consideration of the request.
Agenda item 10.2.2, Halifax Regional Police 2025-2026 operating budget. Chief McLean, you heard the comment that I made at the outset to Superintendent. And before the motion goes on the floor, I'm going to ask if there's any additional comments that you want to make to the submissions that have been made already.
No, Chair, similar to Superintendent Moser, is that there's no new information, and thank you for the invitation.
For consideration by the Commission, the motion reads as follows: that having ensured that the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2025-26, as presented at the December 4 and December 18, 2024 meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners, is consistent with those matters referred to in subsection 55(3) of the Police Act. The Board of Police Commissioners moves the following recommendation. Number 1, that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed 2025-26 Halifax Regional Police operating budget of $101,255,700, which includes a proposed increase in the composition as set out in the proposed service enhancements identified in the 2025-26 budget information package and as presented by Chief McLean to the board on December 18, 2024. Is there a mover, please? Vice Chair O'Malley, Commissioner Kent seconds. Questions for Chief McLean? His motion is that.
No, but he just put the motion on the floor.
He should get the first opportunity to speak to the motion.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to make an observation. I first wanted to compliment the chief and the department on the quality of the submission. Gives a excellent description of the request and its implications next year. And I think everybody should be aware of that as well. So in particular, the body worn camera initiative has a small portion of it in this fiscal year, but we are making not a formal commitment, but a strong informal commitment to pass it next year, the larger request around the body worn camera initiative. Just wanted to state the obvious. And I do support that. I'm a technology guy, so I'm a big supporter of it. And I think it will play an important role in many aspects. So in terms of collecting evidence, in terms of getting factual history, audio, video of what actually happened in the situation. And I do know that the other day in our public consultation meetings, we heard a lot of feedback that it can be viewed by some as a re-victimization of some who've gone through a traumatic event. In some cases, the worst moment of their life, and it's all on camera. But I'm convinced, and that with proper policies around how that privacy information is protected and utilized and potentially released to authorized individuals, that concern can be mitigated. So I wanted to say that. As well, I wanted to add on to other benefits that perhaps we're getting close to it. I've seen it in other jurisdictions, but the idea of of other uses of the technology. And this goes to Commissioner Akindoju's comment that we need to do more with technology to make society safer and in a more cost-effective way. And that is there's concepts of real-time operation centers in policing. And some jurisdictions in Canada are really starting to embrace that. Other jurisdictions of the world are more so involved in that. And with by having the body-worn camera technology, there's the opportunity to live stream a current situation that a constable is experiencing back to a real-time center. And that center can provide assistance. And it's not just in policing. It can be in helping to address a medical health crisis incident that they're asked to intervene in. There could be a social worker, a mental health crisis personnel supporting and giving direction. And when they're seeing the visual cues that case that the officer's having to address. So I think there's tremendous opportunity here to do a lot more with the technology. And, for that reason, I absolutely support the adoption of the technology. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Kent, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start as well, again, acknowledging the work that went into creating the path forward for us as commissioners to get the information that we needed to come to our conclusion about supporting the request that has been put forward. I as well appreciate Commissioner O'Malley's consideration around and words around the body worn cameras. I think it is absolutely the direction that we want to go in. We had in the past 4 years, and I know with Commissioner Blackburn and Commissioner Smith, we had endorsed body worn cameras at an earlier stage with policy development and such. And now what I like as well is we have learned a lot from our partners in policing with the RCMP and around sourcing and such, and how to, and we can lean on them for the policy pieces. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come forward. But the request this year is around 7 FTEs, and so I want to just speak directly to that. The victim services caseworker, we sat here today and we heard about intimate partner violence. We heard about domestic violence today. Our victim services files and caseworkers and our people that work within that department are skilled and experienced, and they're using a model that actually is sought after, I think, across the country, and as far as best practice. So adding 2 more people to that, I think, is absolutely the right direction to go. We have, sadly, we have shifted a paradigm of that, the direction where that those cases are now on the rise. I've worked with the shelters across this province and throughout the country and a number of boards. And, at that time, and that would have been even 2017, we were struggling with governments even really having any kind of strategic space for battling and serving those folks who are not battling, but approaching this in a way that is preventative, right? But we can't not provide services to those who ultimately are involved. And when they get to files where the police are involved, and when we hear about those that are fatalities, we need our people to be part of their support system. And I'm just really glad to see this in here. The cultural and support manager, for sure, as we grow in particular, we need to have that, a forensic media specialist. Auditor, I can't stress enough, I think, the importance of that within the system. We have an oversight on the larger picture, and the auditor allows you internally to know what's being watched and looked after. I certainly too can support the equipment quartermaster and the administrative assistant. Both play critical pieces in the plan that we have to create the force that we need as far as sort of the service delivery. I don't even like using that word, the force that we need, the service delivery team for providing police in our communities. But we need to bring them into the system, which is the police science program, right? To bring them in. And I'm very encouraged by the numbers that you spoke about earlier, that we have, 700 and last year 600 people that wanted to be part of HRP. That's
30 seconds, please, Commissioner.
That's good. So I will be supporting this budget ask. I'm still open to hearing from our other members of the commission to see if there's things that I've missed out on. But at a time when our growth it's very much the same as when I was speaking to the RCMP, at a time that we are in society right now, we need to increase in order to serve. That's the key here. And I think Commissioner Giles spoke about some of the submissions that we've received. This won't necessarily be popular to some folks out there, but we have an obligation to support the need based on what we understand is happening here in our city. And that's what I'm prepared to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Akindoju, please.
Through you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank the Chair. Your opening speech is fantastic, fantastic. And I'm not going to add to that. I hate to waste time. I just want the public to know that we've deliberated. This is all about budget. The whole of December 18th and thereon, we deliberated on details of this budget. Documents that I have never seen since I've been on the board. Both the HRP and RCMP provided enough details, opened themselves up to further questions out of this meeting to provide all the information we need. So therefore, we have received the information. We have scrutinized it. We have asked deep and very, very dirty questions, and they have provided their answers. I want to thank both chiefs for the time you have spent to provide us the information. Not only that, the CAO, for even prior to the budget session, training us to understand the process of funding. Those are the critical things. But let me share my experience with you. I moved to this country 24 years ago, from a country where police or men and women of armed forces were not adequately taken care of. I can share my experience emotionally. You don't want to say it. But when you speak from your experience, you speak from your heart. We need to take care of men and women of forces. They are the only ones that run towards what we run away from. I've said this over and over and over again. Every department have budget increase. Health, Nova Scotia Power, these. We don't fight them this much. But these people who wear gadgets and wear this and that just to protect our lives, we battle them. Some words that were used shouldn't be used for people who protect our lives. If anything happens to any one of us here or extended family, the first people we are calling is the police. We love you. We love what you're doing. We can only encourage you. Your budget ask has been scrutinized. You have not asked for too much. We're expanding in color, in size, and geographically. Therefore, we need policing. Businesses are crying. Just listen to the news yesterday and ask how many business people want policing in their offices. They're asking for 14.6, and we're still complaining. Look, this is an opportunity for me to thank you, if nobody will, for the wonderful jobs that you do. At night, we have been, or I have been, and most people here, been on rides with you. I've seen those things in the nights. So I want to thank you so much for all the wonderful things that you do. I will support both budgets, the RCMP and the HRP, because really, the incremental cost they're asking for are things. Tell me one policeman or woman that is not a taxpayer. They also pay taxes. So it's not just about taxpaying. It's about what is required to save all of us. That said, I just want to advise. I've been to a bit of a few community meetings. There's information gap. People need to be informed. They need to get closer to you. I can assure you, I've been to some of the ones you've done. You're doing it. I'm asking to please do more. Provide this information as needed to the public so that we are all informed of what is going on, how you're protecting us, and how things will change. Therefore, I just, again, in closing, want to thank you. Chiefs, I want to please pass on our gratitude to all your members of staff for what they're doing. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll probably have to come back a second time, as I do have a lot to say at this point in time. So first of all, I want to thank those residents who've emailed me, who have called me, who've stopped me in the grocery store or stopped me in the park to talk about policing. I want to thank all of those, I think some 28 speakers last week that spoke to us. I do want to thank them for sharing their opinion. We heard, and I believe many of those speakers last week talked about the trauma either they or their family member or a friend or the organization they work with, the people that they help, said the trauma that at the hands of the police. So I believe that. I believe that occurred. There was trauma in those experiences. Many of those people, though, spoke and with frustration, saying the Board of Police Commission, the regional council does not listen to residents, not listening to them. They stated that the majority of folks want to, in fact, defund the police and want to reduce the budget. They're saying we're not listening. Well, I can share with all of you that I'm listening. I'm out in my community every day. I'm speaking to seniors. I'm speaking to business owners. I'm going to the schools. I'm going to the community centers. I'm in my community every day. And very often we're talking about safety of our community, policing. And when I talk to these different folks, I hear a lot of things. I hear about overall safety. I hear probably, for the counselors here in this room, the number one comment we talk about policing is speeding. And you know what? If speeding is the number one complaint we're getting, I'm happy with that versus what it could be. And some of the things we've talked about today. I do hear a lot about intimate partner violence in the crisis that we're in right now. And we're just seeing in the past few weeks how those numbers are going up higher. I hear about neighbors that live next to an encampment or to a shelter, and their concern of safety for themselves, their family, their property. In my area, we're opening up the province has opened up a shelter community in Bancroft off of the Windmill Road area now. And there are concerns from those neighbors. I hear from the downtown businesses in Dartmouth, here in Dartmouth, in downtown Halifax, that they want to, Chief, return to that beat cop like they used to have many years ago. We talked earlier about, Chief, you talked about the retail theft, and it's on the rise right here. We've heard examples here in this building where the liquor commissioners downstairs blatantly walking in, taking their time, removing items from the shelves and just walking out the door, and the impact that has on the community. We hear about people watching the TV and hearing about guns. I asked questions earlier about guns, hearing about the drugs and the opiate drugs we're seeing. All we have to do in Canada is look at Vancouver, and we're seeing what's happening with drugs in the streets and the opioids, and how that's now coming across the country and the fear that it's showing up here at a higher level. I hear from residents, they talk about the unsolved murders in the cold cases. I hear about the lack of patrols at night in some of our communities. Montebello, near where I live, that there may be only one cop at night there. Or in Bedford, same situation. The concern of that, and the average resident not realizing that may be the only number of officers at night. I hear about the cars and the sheds being broken into. I also hear about that we have to support our police. We want to see more police out there. We want to see more resources out there. We want to see, when it used to be years ago that you were fearful of driving down the street because most likely there will be a radar check down the street. We don't see that as much. We hear about defund the police. The last time I was in the Board of Police Commission, it came up, that motion that came up to create a report on defund the police. And I was not in favor of it at the time. And we had great debate over that. Now, the result of that motion has come forward, and we do now have the report. And I will admit, that's a good report. It's a very good report. And there's a lot of good recommendations in it. I don't agree with all the recommendations in it, but it's a very good, solid report, and it's a good thing that we've done that report. There's many reports that we have out there that we need to pay attention to. The mass casualty report, the Wortley report, the report from the August 11th incident in front of the old public library on Spring Garden Road. But these are reports. And it doesn't mean that we have to follow through on all the recommendations in those reports, but we do have to pay attention. And there are a lot of those recommendations we should put in place. How am I doing timing, Mr. Chair?
You're just about up, Commissioner, but
Okay.
if you want to continue on for your additional 3 minutes, please feel free.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I do not believe in defund. I do believe in detask. But unfortunately, right now, when there's incidents, there's issues out there, mental health incidents, as example, the only people we have to respond are our police. It may be 3 o'clock in the morning when services may be available at 8 or not available at 3. The speakers spoke to us about not taking any additional money and put it in something else, like housing, we heard, food, intimate partner violence, library services, help for the homeless, healthcare, missing persons teams, mental health, addiction support. I agree we should support all of that. But folks, we as a council, a regional council and a board of police commission, we have to stay within our lane. You know, we look at that list of items I mentioned, you know, intimate partner violence, absolutely policing, that's within our lane, library services, and there's nobody more in regional council that supports library services than me. We all support it, and what the library does to help for those that are marginal, those individuals, library services right across the hall, what they do, just sit here and watch what they do. That's within our lane. Homelessness is the responsibility of the province of Nova Scotia, and I say this respectfully. When we saw the homeless rise in Nova Scotia, we had to step up as a municipality because the province wasn't doing their job. Now, I give them credit. They've stepped up dramatically right now. But at first, we were the only ones that had to do it, and we needed to step up. However, I'm concerned because we didn't stay in our lane, and now the expectations for us is to do more. But that's a discussion we'll have at a later time with the province. You know, we only have so much money, and some of these things aren't an either or, but we have to balance that with our budget that we're coming into. We need the help from province in many of these items, and I agree we need to have more support in the mental health and addictions and housing people. And that's the province that needs to lead that, and we play a role in that, but that is the province. You know, Bill Moore is here representing his team, public safety, community safety, and we are hiring a new commissioner of safety. They're working on a civilian-led crisis team, a 24/7 civilian-led crisis team, and that's going to help us detask. That's going to help us give the expertise we need when police go into those situations so that we can avoid police doing something they shouldn't be doing, but have an expertise so there's less trauma in those situations. But we still have to stay in our lane. There is a big gap in mental health supports. There's a big gap in mental health supports for our police officers. We heard about some incidents here today, and the RCMP and the military have different supports than our HRP officers. We have many HRP officers here today. We lost an officer this past summer who chose to take, his escape was to take his own life. We can't have that happen again in our municipality. We have officers that are off right now. They're off duty right now for a variety of reasons, but some of them are contemplating that actual solution. Is it time for them to take their own life? So we need to really step up. I have a motion coming to council, hopefully in February, to look at how do we provide more support. There is support, but there are gaps in that support, and you heard me speak at this commission before. I'm almost finished, Mr. Chair. We need to look at policing different, and we need to be better. We talked about the trauma from police. We need to provide the proper skills for police. We need to have the right expertise when it comes to mental health and wellness checks and emergency room visits. We need to continue to change the way we look at policing so that police can focus on policing. And if police officers do something wrong, then they need to be accountable for that. I look here, there's representation. I see Sergeant Perry in the room with her colleagues representing the police union. If a police officer is proven to do something wrong, we need to make sure we follow through on that. Same as if an elected official does something wrong. Versus the perception in the past has been, you know, the blue, protect the blue at all means. If someone does something wrong, we need to follow through on that, in my opinion. the body worn cameras, Commissioner O'Malley brought up, and that was my motion originally, last time I was here, and I'm glad to see we're moving in that direction, and I could talk at great lengths of why that's a good idea. Yesterday, we had at Regional Council, the HRM resident survey results were presented to us at Regional Council. And there was a list of the highest satisfaction of services. Number one was 94% of the people who responded that fire service there, that their satisfaction was that high. Next to that was libraries, 93%.
Commissioner,
Policing
you're
was on the
approaching-
list.
Commissioner, you're approaching 12 minutes.
Okay.
I think you should wrap up.
I will. Police, public libraries was on that list. Policing is not on that list. We need to get policing on that list. And to wrap up, thank you for Chair. I support the budget. However, Chief, I look at you. I support the budget leaving here and going to Regional Council. We get to Regional Council though, I switch hats. I have to put my councilor hat on, and we have to prioritize all the budgets that we're dealing with. And there's a lot that we have to deal with. But my support is here to go to that direction, and we'll look forward to more discussion at that point in time. I appreciate the extra time, Mr. Chair and colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hinch, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Mancini, I believe that you were talking to me the whole time when it comes to this topic, because they told me to speak with my heart. So if I speak with my heart, I'll just break out and cry. But that being said, you know, I love what I see in the direction of the way that HRP is going, and I can only really speak to HRP because that's my, you know, my area. The fact that we do have, you know, Chief Don McLean and Deputy, is it Deputy? Ooh, Dean Simmons. Anyways, so I'm seeing a lot of changes that are reflecting our community, as in the Black community I'm speaking to right now. I know that I represent over 25,000 people in our district, and I realize that there's pros. There's one side of a coin, and then there's another side of a coin. The one side of the coin is when we had the open conversation, and I thank all those people who came out to speak, because again, I understand your frustration. And as me, as a citizen, as a person that is growing up in that community, I've seen how things have been addressed when it comes to us as African Nova Scotians, as Blacks, dealing with the police. I've seen the bad side and somewhat of a good side, but more or less of a bad side. But and then as I came right out from this road from Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Agency, and when I rolled in, I rolled right in. I didn't take a break or anything like that. I see that are within that department that I worked in. I found that a lot of the and again, it's sort of negative, that where they didn't feel like they were being heard within the communities, within the seniors in manners and things of that nature. When I've called upon at times with regards to certain situations that are going on. So, I mean, I came out here, well, my thought was to automatically say no to this budget, because of the fact is that I believe that resources can go elsewhere. And by the sounds of things, we are trying to go in that direction of putting resources in certain spaces, like the safety program, or yes. Again, I can be very emotional at times, and right now I am, because I know what my community is going through. And me, myself, my family, my relatives, I've seen what they've gone through. And I mean, I'm not saying they're always on the right side of the law or anything of that nature, but I mean, sometimes it could be a little bit harsh, a lot harsh. Um, and then when we talked about the body worn cameras previously, and I said we don't have those already. Like I assumed that we did, but with that being said, I mean, in recent like on the TV recently, where a police officer is literally um, um, showing this woman, pulled this woman over for a DUI, and we see everything within this video of what happened in this DUI. I don't think no public should be seeing what happened in that video, from the point where her top was pulled up and things like where she pulled her top up and everything. I think that is totally disrespectful and distasteful. Even though they said that the officer was doing it in a tasteful manner, but he laughed and things of that nature. So I'm concerned, and I know that, and my community is concerned about that as well, when it comes to things like that. And I know that's what some of the people we're speaking to when it comes to body worn cameras and their privacy and things of that nature. So I've seen it firsthand, so I know what's going on there. Um, uh, Listening to the other commissioners, I understand that we do need the police. I understand that we do need um, uh, to support you guys in a way that is going to be helpful to us. Um, I'm on the fence still about supporting this budget. And the reason being because, again, when I put myself out there and put my name out to become the next counselor of my area, that I would support these people, that I would support their agendas, not so much all their agendas, but I would support them in a way that makes sense to me. And when I listened to most of the conversations the other on the 6th or the 8th or what? Yes, last week. Um, they spoke, some of them spoke quite eloquently and passionately, and I understood, and I totally know where they're coming from. So I'm on the fence. I can't say for sure one way or another. I know it does go to council from here, and hopefully which way I do decide to go. Um, I need the public to know that it is with great intention that I support the community, and that it's not always about being in the negative or being in the wrong or being on their side or this side. It's also being a good counselor, being a good commissioner, making sure that we're getting what we need to support us. So I thank you both for your presentations and things. It's not a big ask. It really isn't. But I just need to know that it is being represented in a way that's going to support. I have to say District 8, because District 8 is as we know, especially Chief McLean, you know that there's a lot of problems in that area, and that we have to try to address them, have to fix them in a way that supports the homeless, supports the unhoused, supports the people that are dealing with mental health issues, support. There's times when we call for a wellness check. I understand that even when I've done a wellness check with a police officer, and it ended up being the person has been deceased or something of that nature, I see what toll it takes on them. I see what toll it takes, and I never really realized that. I just assume, yep, that's your job. Do your job, and I can't really say that, because again, there's like a piece with it. Whereas you take this home, just like with the New Year's Eve. my question is, are your officers okay? Because again, they came across 2 victims who were shot, another one that was shot on the Commons. This isn't an everyday occurrence. We need to know, are you, because again, we asked the RCMP how they're feeling, how they're doing, and things of that nature. But I forgot to totally ask, how are you guys doing? How are your men doing? Are your officers doing after that incident? Because again, it's not an easy thing. Um, you know, it's not a hard job. I mean, it is a hard job. It's not an easy job, I want to say. And I respect all that you do. And I will, as a counselor, I'm going to continue to do my best to support my community and to support HRP as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief McLean, is there anything that you want to say in direct response to any of Commissioner Hinch's observations with respect to the community, which is better known by you and by Commissioner Hinch than perhaps I and perhaps some of the other commissioners?
No, certainly to what Commissioner Hinch is referring to is the fact that we grew up not far from, the same spots, right? It's a place where my mother still lives and has worked all her life. When you say it's not an easy job, I recognize you don't have an easy job neither, right? No. And I think that's important. And I think the only thing, when I say we, I mean the collective we, is the ask of anyone that sits around this table is make the decision that you think is best for you and serving your constituents. That's all you can do at the end of the day. Just as I sit here and bring forward a budget that I think speaks to my responsibility to provide policing services to the community, all the communities.
Yes.
Therefore, I think, thank you for asking the question about our people. You're right. It is tough. It is tough. It's not normal to see people who've been shot. It's not.
No.
Regardless of what, we get desensitized to it because we see it on TV and we see it, the reality is that's not normal, right? And that's why even with, the RCMP members who responded to the fire, that's not normal. And, one of the things the next day after that, reached out to make sure our people get the supports they need that have been, that deal with those situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, thank you for saying that. Again, I recognize it's not an easy situation to be placed in. All you can do is what you can do.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you again, Commissioner Hinch. Commissioner Akindoju, please, second time.
Thank you very much, Chair. In fact, the summary of this is what the councillor, I'll call you councillor this time, because I want to address the councillors. It's not a big ask. Budget is all about facts. I want to address councillors who are members of this board. I want to address councillors who are home or sitting down in the council today. I want to make an appeal to you. We live in a world that is good and bad. There are good people, there are bad people. Good police, bad police. Good doctors, bad doctors. Good accountants, bad accountants. Good bankers, bad. It can go on and on. Lastly, good councillors and bad councillors. It is not about that. It's about positive. What we're looking at here is, yes, simple economics. It says our resources are scarce and limited. But we need to prioritize. When you say it's not a big ask, security is a big issue. These men and women, day, night, you hear the siren up and down, just like fire, just like the ambulances. And lastly, police. You cannot continue to take from them. The only thing we can do, and I'm addressing you all, please have one heart, not two. I know you have other responsibilities, but I ask, based on my experience, you cannot take away from security. It's impossible. We talk about body worn cameras. Before now, tell me, in any event, everybody brings their cell phone. Where's the policy against cell phones? You can record the police, but the police cannot record you. It is not about policing. I'm just asking, let us all be fair about security and insecurity. You don't want to be in a situation of insecurity. So this is why I'm addressing the councillors, because all of this will be a sham. If this goes back to council and is destroyed, wow. You have said it. It's not a big ask. We have said it. They have given us they've answered all our questions. And therefore, asking and appealing that if once we've passed this, I'm appealing. Because you serve a community of good and bad people. You serve a community of people who are calling for more police and support of police. You have to listen to them too. So I'm making my final appeal. Please pass this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge that, I mean, I sound very motherly, but I'm so proud of this board. We have grown, and Virginia, Commissioner Hinch, for you to speak and be emotional to me is really important for this board. Commissioner Akindoju, the same. Commissioner Mancini, we have members here now who feel the weight of our responsibility. And we need to feel that. Each and every one of us needs to feel it. Wherever this goes today, the thing that I want to remind everyone of, which is when we join these boards, our governance hinges on, when we make a decision like this, did we have enough information? Did we ask questions that got us to where we can stand by our choice, our vote? Then you can say you did your job. We aren't experts in policing. We aren't experts in it. We didn't come here with that in our backgrounds. And I think that that's a benefit. But we need to make a decision based on the information we were given, the commitments that we made to doing this job. We're now, those of us who are counselors, we are not counselors at this moment. We are commissioners. And as commissioners, did we ask the right questions? Did we have the information we needed? Did our chiefs come prepared? Are our members, in this case, when I think about my heart, are we serving our members of our police forces so they can do the job that they are expected to do? There are people in our communities who are not going to be happy with a decision that we make, one way or another. But we are not here to decide whether or not the police should be in our communities or not. Facts are they are. The service that we have committed to for our public, and they have committed to. And as human beings, our members have committed to, come in to do. And every chief that's in superintendent and partner in policing that's here today have committed to. They're here, they're now, they're doing it. Our decision is about supporting that in a way that is about the delivery of service at the end of the day. And it's about having a healthy and supported, and for me, healthy, supported, equipped, which includes human resource equipped, equipped like the asks that are coming today? And how is my decision today about making sure that service delivery based on a police force that we have or could have in the future, because they're not, despite defend requests, it's not going away, not in my generation, probably not in our lifetimes. They're necessary. And each and every one of us go to sleep at night knowing that they're there. And we all have said that. So just, I guess for me, if you're questioning where you sit on this, remember your commissioner today. That council does, we're making a recommendation to council ultimately, just so we all know the process. Council will then take it and they will either decide it's all a good decision, what we've put forward, or it's all not. They don't get to dissect it. They push it. If council doesn't approve what we approve, they send it back and we have to take another look at it. In some cases, we might just push it all back and say, no, it's exactly what we want it to be. We're going to push it back to you again. But that's how this will go. Okay, so I'm really proud of everybody here. I feel very emotional about that. And I'm just glad you're all members. Thank you for being you. You be you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I call the question, Vice Chair O'Malley, having moved the motion, do you have any further comments? Any final comments?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. The motion is carried unanimously. Chief and Superintendent Matthews, your team, including CAO O'Toole, CFO Blackwood, very important aspects of the inputs, which are so crucial to our being able to make decisions, which at least to us, on the basis of the information that we have available and the basis of the understandings we have of our statutory mandate, make these crucial decisions. So to all, thank you very much. I think we should recess for 10 minutes, bearing in mind that Commissioner Hinch only has about another hour. And I think the final items on the agenda should be able to be accomplished easily within that hour.
Thank you.
I'll call the meeting to order. We're on agenda item 10.3. Commissioner O'Malley, recommendation to procure an armored rescue vehicle. Prior to asking Commissioner O'Malley to introduce his motion, before we can seek a seconder, I'm going to ask CAO O'Toole to provide us with some background information which might be helpful in framing the motion and in framing the discussions that we have with respect to the motion.
Thank you, Chair Giles. So Commissioner O'Malley's motion regarding the Board of Police Commissioners taking a position on inclusion of funding in the municipality's capital budget is not unusual, to the extent that the Board of Police Commissioners has passed motions in the past, either for or against, mostly for, requesting funding for different things for Halifax Regional Police. The most recent I can remember would have been the request to add additional funding for the August 18th encampment review. So with respect to this one, it's a capital budget funding request, and the municipality has the obligation to equip the municipal police force with equipment. The other reason that this type of equipment would show up in the municipality's budget is the municipality is the employer. So we do have the obligation to look at occupational health and safety concerns, for example, and also broader public safety issues. And we manage things like fleet and buildings corporately because we can get better economies of scale, frankly, and specialized expertise by centralized management of things like vehicles and buildings. So the budget that HRM Council approved last year, the capital budget, had a fleet enhancement line item in it for the replacement of the 2 existing vans that are used by the emergency response team. So that budget line item was approved by council in last year's budget. And there was a fleet enhancement submission that supported not replacing, like for like and just buying more vans, but getting something different. So what's ordered is a 2 Ford F-350 pickup trucks, which are armored. So they're hardened compared to like a normal panel van or a normal pickup truck, but they look just like a normal F-350 pickup truck. If you see these going down the street, I don't think you're going to recognize that they're anything different or anything spectacular. So that's what's already been ordered, and that's what's arriving in May. The capital budget that will be tabled on February 5th will include funding for a requested armored rescue vehicle. The vehicle specifications are still under development between Halifax Regional Police and Corporate Fleet Services. The budget is going to be approximately $600,000. And when the budget book becomes public, which will be about a week before the capital budget meeting, it's going to be found under capital budget account CV2 40005. So for anybody who's interested, there's going to be a lot of detail in just another couple of weeks. And what is being requested is similar to the vehicle that Fredericton has. And the other piece of new information, after we started down this road of preparing the capital budget and working on this year's requests, we have subsequently learned the first week of January that there is currently an active complaint to Labor, Skills and Immigration with respect to occupational health and safety regarding the lack of this vehicle. I don't know the timing of how that investigation will work relative to us hearing anything back from it before the capital budget needs to be approved by the municipality. But it is something that has started and is ongoing. It would be fairly unusual for the Department of Labor to issue an order to anyone saying you need to buy an X, but it can happen. And what's more likely is getting something that would say there's a bona fide safety risk. How are you going to mitigate it as employer? And then we would work on that. So that is in play, and that's new information that I'm not necessarily sure we have conveyed to the Board of Police Commissioners at a public meeting. So that's the backdrop. And if the Board of Police Commissioners does approve Commissioner O'Malley's motion, then it would be passed onward to HRM Council for consideration when we bring forward that capital budget on February 5th.
Thank you, CAO. Vice Chair O'Malley, do you want to lead off with the moving of your suggested motion and placing it into the record?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would. I did submit earlier to the clerk a motion which was circulated in the meeting pre-package, and I have a simplified version of that motion, which
We'll put it up.
You should read the original motion.
Read the original
first,
motion?
and then-
Okay.
Then we'll proceed if
Okay.
you plan to have
Yeah.
an amendment to it.
Right. So just to add to what the CO just commented on, we have not seen any of the details of what's desired, what was requested, what was spec'd, what's in the budget, any of that information as a board that I'm aware of. We haven't seen any of that. It's been in the news a lot. There's a lot of,
With the motion.
sure. Okay, let's put the motion on. Shall I just read?
Just
So,
read the original motion and then.
Pursuant to the provisions of sections 8-2-I of Halifax Regional Municipalities Bylaw P1004, the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners hereby recommends to the Chief Administrative Officer, through the municipality's capital budget process with respect to the provisioning of the Halifax Regional Police, that the CAO undertake appropriate investigation and procurement processes as are in the CAO's discretion with respect to the acquisition of an armored rescue vehicle for the use by the Halifax Regional Police pursuant to the provisions of such policies as are adopted by Halifax Regional Police and the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners in relation thereto.
Do you want to proceed if you
Yeah.
plan to read an amended motion?
Yeah, I'd
Put
like
that on
to
the
put a
floor
more
now.
friendly version in that simplifies it. The original motion, part of the original submission packets, just was quoting a lot of internal legislative specifications that I don't think is necessary. So the amended friendly motion, as shown up on the screen here, is that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend that Regional Council approve the including of funding for the acquisition of an armored rescue vehicle for the use by the Halifax Regional Police in the municipality's 2025-26 capital budget. There is an error in the in that. It should be, that's a 21-year budget there. We'll go down to a 1-year budget.
Can I have clarification of what just happened here? He read the motion as was submitted to the public, but now he has the right to just change that now, even though that's gone public. He has the right, because until we put it on the floor, it has no actionable commitment, right? Okay, so now he's just making that change,
That's right.
throwing out the old and in with the new,
And looking for.
and putting that, yes,
Seconder.
so I think Commissioner Akindojo has seconded that.
No.
No,
I just
okay,
want to make
I'll
a
second it.
clarification further to what you just said.
Okay, I will second that, but I just needed to know that, what I'm seconding, that. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I just want clarification. You're not, I think both motions mean the same. Like Greg said, some has, it's not jargon, it has the law. and I think we should just follow as stipulated. Now we're having two different documents here. So for clarification, I would want to second, as you read, as per the 10.3.1, it for me semantically means the same. So why do we want to confuse ourselves? I know your intention is to make it easier, but I mean this is where partially well it has to clarify the reason. So
There is some question about the adoption of the word policies, whether they would apply to the procurement function or whether they would apply exclusively to the use function after procurement.
my understanding is that we can amend this particular one
Yes.
rather
That's
than
what we're
create another one. If
Well,
Greg O'Malley, okay, sorry, the councillor, Commissioner O'Malley wants to amend this, I think will be preferable than creating something else. What do you think?
the end result is the same.
The end result is the same, but as I understand it, there was a question arose whether in the original motion, right, whether the recommendation going to council was just as to the use of the vehicle being controlled by policies, or whether that actually pertained to the acquisition process too. So there was an idea it could be broader in the original motion. And what I understand has been done here is to narrow that, right, simply to the recommendation to council that they approve the acquisition of the vehicle, period.
Well, my understanding, all assets are assets, and all assets under the use of the police is governed by policy. Guns, cell phones, or everything has a policy. So is there any difference from this one?
Well, as I understand the difference here was that the question was whether the previous motion, the first one, might be read as suggesting that the police board, this board should have policy controlling the acquisition by the CAO. And that was the concern.
That's out of order.
And that would be out of order, exactly. Whereas this motion confines it simply to recommending an acquisition, right? Not subject to a board policy on acquisition.
Okay,
that
that's
too
okay with me,
Is that
so
okay?
I'll go with the simple one, if it's okay.
Complicated to the point where you'll
Yeah.
go for the simple one, okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so for the record, Vice Chair O'Malley has moved his simplified motion. It's been seconded by Commissioner Kent. Are there comments or questions from the commissioners? CAO.
Are you?
Now that it's actually on the floor, I wanted to ring in again to explain as CAO why I was comfortable seeing this motion proceed or even allowing this line item to come forward in the municipality's capital budget, because I probably could have killed it if I wanted to. The reason that I was comfortable allowing it proceed
Is your mic on?
really relates to the fact that we had the mass shooting event in August at the Africville reunion, which could have been much worse than what it was. But I recognize that really escalated the occupational health and safety concerns being brought forward by employees. And from a public safety concern, it escalated my worries, and I think the worries of several others, in terms of whether or not we had the full toolkit we needed available to us at all times to be able to respond to protect the public in that kind of incident. So that was one thing. The second was a bit of independent research I did, looking at other cities, talking to other cities and other municipalities to see who has them and how they use them. And it is becoming increasingly difficult to justify why a city the size of Halifax would not have one. Fredericton has one, Charlottetown has one. You look at all of the mid-sized or large Ontario municipalities, they all have them. So that's another factor. The third factor is the timing of it coming forward in the capital budget and how quickly we would be able to procure the vehicle and all of that does allow sufficient time for BOPC and HRP to do the very necessary piece of work in terms of getting the policy approved on how it's to be used and having transparency around that. My message to the chief would be, get working on that. That needs to happen quickly. And the final thing that I think it's important to get out there in the public is there is no mounted weaponry on these things, and it's not a tank. And a lot of the photos that have been circulating around are not really accurate. I think I look forward to the tabling of the capital budget, the publication of the book, and also the policy development work that will happen through BOPC around how the vehicle will be used, which will be very transparent and will hopefully dispel a lot of the misinformation that's out there.
Vice Chair O'Malley, do you want to speak further to the motion?
Yes, I haven't spoken at all to the motion yet. I just read the motion.
But you moved it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, CAO, for points of clarification. There has been a great deal of confusion or misinformation, intentional misinformation, I believe, in the media by interested parties that have positioned this particular asset as being something that it's not. And I felt that it was an important piece of equipment given the size of our city, things that have happened in this province, the things that have happened to other cities smaller than us. The city of Fredericton comes to mind, where this particular type of equipment limited the loss of life after that incident that occurred up there. So I'm a very strong proponent of this type of acquisition. I did say under the outcome sought that it's a multi-purpose vehicle. It can be used for more than just a police response in some certain situations. So as a rescue vehicle in a variety of functions. So I had asked in this that the requirements that we look at when we try and procure something be as broad as possible so that it can be used in many different types of functions. And as the CAO highlighted, it is not an offensive vehicle at all. It's there to protect both those who we've asked to serve and help us in difficult times, and to help protect those who are most vulnerable in very potentially violent situations. And so I strongly support it, and I'll ask if there's other commissioners who'd like to speak upon it.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Kent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner O'Malley, for bringing this forward. I'm happy to second it. For me, this, again, just your comments about how I think it's being spun, and I'm going to say that word, it's being spun, wordsmith, to look like it's some kind of offensive tactic. And it's not. It's protection. It's protection for our members who are serving the public, and it's protection for people who may be in need of a rescue in some capacity that otherwise we would not have the option the same way. I believe, my understanding is that our HRP have been able to access an armored rescue vehicle through the RCMP partners, but not always. And I think that when we do a jurisdictional scan, which is what often is done to see what other cities are doing, we can say conclusively that Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, Hamilton, Brandon, Barrie, Fredericton, all are utilizing a vehicle like this that we know of. And the majority of them have been doing that for over a decade. We're behind the times in that way. It is not an armed vehicle in any way, and our members will use them. So again, I'm just going to repeat some of the things that just strike me, that allow me to vote in favor of it. Occupational health and safety, I heard that as well when I did a lot of my opportunities to talk with members of HRP. Public safety situation, member safeties, resident safety, and the jurisdictional scan. the capacity for the CAO, I'm happy to support the CAO in this. It's easy for, our CAO is the top person in the municipality from a public servant perspective. If anyone's going to be able to make these kinds of decisions, it's that person, and it's Kathy O'Toole. And I am particularly in favor that we now have that capacity to move forward with it within that budget deliberation. I don't think it's been approached in the past that way, and I think that's more than reasonable. So I think I'm happy to support the way we are approaching it, which is recommending that she continue down that path. I think that's the way I read it. So happy to support it. Hope that we can get there with council's endorsement and provide this for our public who we are committed to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, Chief, could you please, one of the pieces of clarification that's needed is what are the two Ford F-50s used for versus what would, and I'll speak to what the rescue vehicle is used for, but there's a difference, the application. And that's a lot of people have reached out to us and said, well, wait a minute, you just approved 2 trucks and now you want a 3rd truck. Why do we need 3? But my understanding, they're used for 2 different things. If you could explain that, please.
Yeah, to the commissioner, basically at the end of the day, the F-350s become day-to-day operational vehicles on which the emergency response team members will conduct their day-to-day on a regular basis. Like the CAO pointed out, they're F-350s, which are big, but the reality, when you up armor vehicles, you increase the weight and you require a more sufficient chassis than you would on something that's regular. But it provides protection in the cab area and ballistic windshield piece. But it is, if something were to happen right now, for instance, and the members had to go, this would they'd be able to go in right away and will provide them that added protection. An armored rescue vehicle, as you know, is not something that's used on a day-to-day basis. It's something that requires, there's an operational piece that's that needs to be approved, and it's for really high-level critical incidents. You can have both at an incident.
Right, I understand.
Of how it unfolds, but what we're really speaking to is the ones that people would operate on a day-to-day basis, carrying out their business, which is, as we all know, at the best, unpredictable.
Thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off because the chair's going to cut me off now based on my last
cut me off.
I know you won't cut you off. That's right. So thank you for that. I think that's really important because there's misunderstanding of the 2 types of vehicles. Also, the other thing that's causing the misunderstanding, and I think the CIO alluded to it, there was a CBC article that came out again. It was similar report in 2020 when we last discussed this. A picture of a very military-styled looking vehicle, and even though all the particulars of what we're looking to purchase this time is not out there yet, but I can confirm with everyone that's not what we're talking about. I think CAO alluded to, if you were to Google Fredericton Police Force rescue vehicle, you'd see what most likely we're looking for is that type of vehicle. So that's also causing that. We're hearing the term tank all the time, and I think that's causing it, and that's incorrect. So let's be clear on the use of this rescue vehicle. It's meant to be used for high-risk scenarios, like an active shooter scenario. And God forbid, hopefully we don't have any more of those. CAO alluded to one when we had one this summer, and it was an awful situation. And could that vehicle have assisted in that area, that situation? I believe it could have. Hostage rescue operations. High-risk scenarios, even natural disasters, bringing equipment in or bringing first responders into a dangerous situation. That's what we're talking about. It's a rescue vehicle. What is key, in my opinion, is strong policy. We need strong policy of what the vehicle is used for and what it's not used for. And in 2020, that was one of the reasons it went off the rails, because that wasn't explained very well. This time, I believe we're crystal clear on it. What we're talking about is a defined purpose in the policy. It's must focus on life-saving operations, public safety emergencies, disaster response. What it's not used for, and this is key in the policy, routine patrols. You're not going to see this driving around on Portland Street just for a patrol. It's not going to be used for crowd control. not going to be used for crowd control, not going to be used for activities that could be perceived as militarization of police. Many people reached out, well, RCMP have one, and they're more than happy to lend it, and they do lend it to us. The problem is the RCMP have one, but they cover the entire province. And we need it right now for a situation that's going on on Waverly Road. Well, it could be in Sydney, Cape Breton, or it could be in Yarmouth by the time we get to it. And there are times when it's maybe off for maintenance that's simply not available. So we need to make sure our police officers have the tools they need to do their job. There are some that we heard from last week that I go back to the trauma they faced. Not all, but some of them, and I really
30
get the
seconds,
sense
Councillor,
they're looking to punish the police because of the trauma they received, and they shouldn't have received that trauma. I agree, but this is about what are the right tools, and make sure we have strong policy to go around it. And I support this, and we'll support it when it comes to our budget discussion at council. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Are there other commissioners with comments that they wish to make? Commissioner Hinch, please.
She hasn't.
Thank you. So I have looked at this as well, and I've received many emails with regards to the armored vehicle.
Armored, not armed.
And then I had a conversation with Madam CAO.
Yeah.
And she explained it a little bit more better to me. But here's what I'm trying to understand is the other two vehicles that are about to come in May, or I guess, can you clarify those two vehicles for me? For like, what are they exactly for? Because you said they're going to be on the road more. They're armored, correct?
Let me define armored, Chief. Sorry.
Define armored. Define what the.
The cab area where people sit is armored,
Okay.
Means it-
up armored. They're up
Protected.
armored, added our after factory armor.
Okay.
As well as, I think there's ballistic ratings to the wind, to the glass. But other than that, they're pickup trucks.
They're pickup trucks.
For lack of a better word, that, they can't carry a full team.
Okay. How many people can sit in there?
The truck, probably four.
Four? Okay.
To the reality of if you're in a high risk, if you're in a volatile, high risk sort of active shooter scenario, in terms of an ARV allows you to pull up very close, it allows you to communicate, bring hostage negotiators, do all this other stuff. That's not the intention of day-to-day operational vehicles. They provide that initial response capability and an added level of safety to our responding members that have the primary duty to respond to basically most of these incidents. But at the end of the day, it's just like, for instance, when I joined this police department, we already talked now a long time ago.
Yes.
We didn't give our officers ballistic vests. That may be hard to think of right now. When I first joined, I walked the streets. I had no more vest on than whatever. Some people bought their own and all. What's that? No, a dinosaur. And but the reality is times change, and there's not a police department in the country now that would not provide ballistic armor to their members. An ARV really is a big ballistic vest on wheels. In its simplest form that allows you to do certain things. And the CAO and the other that talked about the list of places that have it. It's by no means exhaustive. Like, I can sit here in my mind, look around and go, Charlottetown, Fredericton, Montreal, Quebec City, Toronto, London, Barrie, Windsor, Hamilton, Brandon, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat,
Need to say more.
Victoria, Vancouver.
Okay.
Right, like the reality, like
Yeah.
as the CAO mentioned, the question is not about what's the process that we have to go. We really have to ask ourselves, why don't we have them?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and what we expect our members to actually do.
Okay. So my other question is the and I don't mean to play devil's advocate. I don't mean to do this. But there was an incident on Kennard Street just after the new year. But there was when I was looking at the video footage, there was a black looked like a tank truck of sorts, a small one, but it looked similar. I'm trying to figure out what is that?
It was the RCMP's
It was the RCMP's?
vehicle that we borrowed that day in relation to a high-risk warrant execution.
Okay, that's all I wanted to
Yeah.
know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. Commissioner Akindoju has not gone yet. So,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Retired Chair. Honestly, like I said earlier, communication is very, very important. You have to be strategic about it. A simple picture of this equipment would have solved all this and would have killed time. Time is important. So if you call anything armored, you can Google. I Googled several things, and I have a picture here. Can I ask the chairman if it's possible to show this publicly? And it's a friendly vehicle. You would see what we're talking about. Can we shoot that on the screen?
just if
Oh, I'm sorry, CEO.
if I may, using my prerogative, Commissioner Kent has the subject picture, and she's made arrangements to put it up as part of her second presentation.
Okay.
And
I
that-
will hold on to that. I just wanted to make that clear.
That picture is going to clarify that what is being discussed is something akin to an armored car or a Brinks truck. Those of us of a certain generation would know what a Brinks truck is. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at a tank with firepower and tracks and something that can go across the desert at 100 kilometers an hour.
Sure, I think CAO wants to talk.
But let me finish. So he's here.
I just wanted to comment that you can, if a picture gets thrown up, that it's a representative example of something
Not
like
the actual thing.
the fleet specifications have not been signed off yet, and we are required to abide by HRM's public procurement policy and the Nova Scotia Public Procurement Act. And whatever picture gets thrown up is not representative of the make, model, or type of vehicle that we'll necessarily be procuring.
I just.
Chief, before Commissioner Kent,
I haven't finished.
oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Akindoju, please.
Thank you. So I agree, but I thought I heard that it's going to arrive. So sometimes when you buy something, at least you know what we're buying and you have a picture of that. So that's, but one thing that I wanted to also raise is the issue of, well, laying so much emphasis on the policy. Critical, very important. And I would suggest, and I know that the police or armed forces carry different types of assets. When I say assets, they know what I mean. And for the use of each assets, they have policies. So I'm not sure if it's necessary for us to say they can do this, they can drive through public, they cannot drive. This equipment has a reason, was purchased for a purpose. What we should be highlighting is why, what's the use, a picture of that, and that probably would have put to rest all these other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kent, second. Oh.
I think it's been covered for the most, but I, you know, like I was going to kind of say what the CAO mentioned in terms of, you know, we have to be careful of, because if you Google all of those police departments I mentioned and put in armored vehicle, you'll see something that looks a little bit different across the, you know, across the spectrum, right? There will be a similarity in there somewhere, you know, where we eventually land. But I want to confirm in terms of, you know, to the chair's comment, yeah, it will not have mechanized tracks. You know, it will not have mounted offensive weaponry in terms of what a tank actually is. You know, so when I hear that all the time, and they talk about tank, and I said this the other day, I said, if I was a military commander and I ordered a tank to my position and an armored rescue vehicle showed up, I'd be woefully displeased about what I received and would not fulfill the mission of what I was trying to accomplish. But I understand that sometimes tank gets misplaced with the word for something that's big. And I understand that. The reality is it is big. It's of a sufficient size to carry a sufficient number of members. But I do want to be careful about putting up specific pictures about certain things that may or may not look exactly like what we would procure.
Thank you, Chief. Those comments having been made, Commissioner Kent, do you still wish to have your second? Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so I Googled the Fredericton model. Anyone can Google it. I'm not going to put a picture up because I don't want people to have the opportunity to spread something that may not. And here's where I'm going to go with it, popular or not. We have an obligation, as I think Commissioner Akindoju was going to communicate this. Communicate what, in fact, this is. It is not a tank, clear and simple. It is not a tank. It is a rescue vehicle that has more fulsome protection for the vehicle to manage the kind of fire power that might come at it. It is armored, not armed. I'm saying this out loud as well because I know, and I'm not pinpointing any one particular media source, but I know that I believe our media as well have a responsibility to public safety. Perpetuating the word tank is not in the public's best interest. If people want to understand what it is, ask. Take a look at it. Take a look at versions of it. This does not mean that that the vehicle that is in Fredericton is exactly what is going to be procured. But rest assured, we will hold our force and our chief and our CAO to the reality that this is not meant to be an armed vehicle. That's our job. That's the kind of policies that we can set. And so I just feel like that has to go on public record for everyone, and everyone in this room and everyone listening and every resident out there has an obligation, and every medium has an obligation to the commitment that we are all making, our members, our serving members are making to protect the public. Our board is making, and I'm saying it again, we all have a responsibility to be upfront about what this is. It's not a tank. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Prior to calling the question, Ms. Lister?
Nothing more to add. No. Unless-
Madam Clerk?
Actually, I do have
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
procedural issue to
I'm
raise.
sorry.
No worries.
Go ahead.
So Commissioner O'Malley's request form, the motion there and the friendly amended motion, the board will need to consider suspending the rules of procedure because procedurally, member requests and motions should include a request for a staff report, and this friendly amended motion does not include that. So the board will need to suspend the rules of procedure in order for the motion to go forward. So I do have wording to include that. If I can have a commissioner move the first part of this as a friendly amendment.
So
Mr.
there's
Chair,
two
I'll do
ways we
that.
could do that. We could make it a separate, or we could make it all in one motion there. The only difference would be to suspend that rule, you'll need a 2/3 vote on it, right? So I think
Okay.
gathered from what I've heard around the table here,
Shouldn't be a problem.
we'll do it in one motion. Okay.
Okay, all in one. So that's a friendly amendment to that.
Read the question, read the amendment.
I'll read.
To read the amendment.
Okay,
Just the part one.
Mr. Chair, good to go? Thank you. I'd move that the Board of Police Commissioners of Halifax Regional Council suspend the rules of procedure under Section 14-2 of Administrative Policy Number 1, the procedures of the Board of Police Commissioners Administrative Policy.
And we'll need Commissioner O'Malley to accept that as friendly.
I accept that as friendly.
And seconder?
And I'm accepted as seconder.
Thank you.
So the motion has been read by Commissioner Kent, moved by Vice Chair O'Malley, seconded by Commissioner Kent. All in favor? We have the majority we require, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Yes. Next agenda item 11, added items. Item 12, in camera, there is none. Item 13, notices of motion. Madam Clerk? Okay. No one knows motion. Date of next meeting, February 3rd, 2025. Move for an adjournment, please. Thank you, Commissioner Mancini.